Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson here, president and founder of Agile Dad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. So without any further ado, let's get started. I have a treat for you today. Today, I am here as part of the Agile Expert Series with somebody who I consider a dear friend, someone I've known for years, Mr. Ken Rubin. So let me tell you a little bit about Ken real quick. So Ken, in case you didn't know already, if you live under a rock, he's the author of the best-selling Agile book on Amazon, Essential Scrum, and he's also a fellow certified Scrum trainer. He's been doing this for a long time, probably as long as I have, if not longer. Ken, how you been?
We've been great, and it's good to see you. I wish we could be in person.
Oh, so do I. I miss those in-person meetings, whether it's at a conference or just rubbing shoulders in the hall. We'll have to get together and do something. We'll have to collab and do something here soon. But today, ladies and gentlemen, this is a topic that I have been waiting to talk about. Now, not only am I here with one of my favorite people in the world, but this is one of my favorite topics. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart as well. So tell us how dependencies are impacting the Agile community right now. I know dependencies are a big deal. I get inquiries all the time, whether it's from leadership about codependent projects or dependent organizations or within team structures. This seems to be something that's really trending right now. So tell me, what impact is dependencies having on Agile organizations, and where do you want to go?
I appreciate the question. If you think about agility at scale, because that's really where this problem's coming in, it's been my experience over the past decade at least, that when I watch organizations try to scale with Agile, the thing that always seems to impinge upon their ability to really get there are the dependencies that exist within their environment. So it's really killing their ability to scale. So to me, this is a fundamental aspect of the scaling within an organization. If you're one team working alone, then all of your dependencies are likely intra-team. And when I talk about dependencies, those aren't the ones I'm interested in.
Right.
I'm interested in shared dependencies, one that requires a coordination between at least two entities to make sure that something gets done. And the reason, of course, that they're important, I think everybody knows this, is that if we fail to coordinate a dependency well, we will impede the flow. And when we impede the flow, then you start getting huge cost of delays. Like, why can't we get anything out the door? Well, I'm still waiting on other teams to do things. And, I put something in their queue and I waited 6 weeks. By the way, it only took them 1 day to actually do the work. Right. But I waited 6 weeks before they had an opportunity because, I wasn't the only one asking them to do something. There were other teams asking. And so what I find is when I go into large companies, one of the first things we have to do is look at the structural dependencies. How are they organized structurally? Hey, this team always has to go to the legal team to get review of dialog box text because it's a medical application. It's like, okay, so you have a structural dependency. No matter what, you're always going to have to go get into that queue. Yeah, it's kind of sad. I was like, well, are you willing to do something about it? Like what? Well, you have a high demand for legal assistance. Maybe we could put a lawyer on your team. Oh, they'll never do that. Well, why don't we talk about why there might be benefits? So there's a lot organizations can do to address sort of fundamental problems of how they're structuring at scale to minimize dependencies. You're not going to eliminate them. I mean, it would be nice if we could. We won't, but we need to be able to at least minimize them because the problem doesn't grow linearly. It grows exponentially.
Right. And I think part of it, too, is when you start talking about, and I love that you took, so I'm going to pull 2 things out of what you said. The first thing is, for years, I've had people ask me in classes, how do I manage and eliminate dependencies? I'm like, you don't eliminate dependencies. You govern or manage dependencies, right? So it's very in line with what you were saying, that especially when you have to be considerate that dependencies don't just come from one place. I love the example that you used where you're in legal. Hey, well, why don't you have a lawyer on a team? It feels like that would be a good solution. And it feels like it's not as impossible as you think it is if you can show that it provides value. So I guess my second question, since it is a daily stand-up, is tell me more about what you and your company Involution, tell me what you're doing to provide avenues of education for people. What resources do people have out there? Are there places that people can go? Are there things? How do I know this is happening and where do I turn?
Appreciate asking that. What I've started doing is a blog series on the topic of dependencies. So there's quite a bit growing on the Involution website, really laying down the foundational aspects of dependencies. Right. I'm also doing a number of meetups, user group meetings around the world. That actually have 2 going this week alone. And I started teaching, I was getting a lot of demands. I started teaching a public class, which is something rare for myself. I typically do private training classes, but there were so many different companies asking. And so in July, I did a class. It's called Dependencies Are Killing Your Agility, Learn to Fight Back. And so in July, I had 54 people sign up for that class because it is the topic that I think is really, people are having to deal with it, and it's causing a lot of problems. So I have another one coming up in September, and I'll probably do one monthly. What I also found is that after I did that class, I got a number of companies saying, oh, we need to do a private session.
Right.
So now I'm doing full day. I already have 3 full day private classes scheduled just on that topic, where the goal is to go deep into a company's dependencies, like model the structure of their organization, look at what's going on, try to look for improvements, talk about strategies for how to best visualize and manage, coordinate dependencies. So honestly, this is where I'm going to be focusing a lot of my time between now and the end of the year, in addition to typical Scrum classes that we teach. But this is, to me, the real focal point.
And that's great. It's awesome. Because I think right now what a lot of people are missing, and I can tell you right now, there's a huge supply and demand issue right now. And let me explain. It feels like when people are coming to me, and they're coming to Agile Dad, they're coming to our company, just like they're coming to Involution. When they come in, they want, I need these things. And they give you the laundry list of everything they need. And you're just like, wow, I don't have enough time to just do everything that they need. So I love that you take the opportunity to really dig in and identify, because I think what's the gap that I've been pointing out is that there are a lot of less expensive options out there. There are a lot of, fly by night training companies that put together a simple class. We're going to walk you through a slide deck, and it's just not getting people the education that they need. It's not that deep dive. It's not the let's lay out your structure. Let's figure out what's happening in your organization. It's not that private one-on-one attention that they get if they come to a company like Involution. It's not that dedicated piece. And I so appreciate that you provide that, and that you give people that avenue and that opportunity. And, with that, the other thing that you brought up that really triggered in my mind was you talked about scaling. And I think that this is another topic I want to talk about just for a minute. It's one of these things where I see organizations that are trying to lock into one prescriptive scaling method. It doesn't matter which one it is, whether it's disciplined agile delivery or SAFe or less, or, pick your poison. It's just what I'm seeing is that by locking into one, a lot of times they're becoming restrictive. And one of the things that that's doing is it's preventing them from properly engaging and managing not just dependencies, but the workload altogether. I find that they're killing themselves in process and not doing the fundamental things that need to be done. So I guess that leads to my third question. So my third question is, now that I know it's an issue, and now that I know the dependencies is a hot topic, because I've been hearing it every class that I teach, I've been hearing people talk about this. How can managing this, or how can now that I know I can sign up for a class, and now that I know I can have these outlets, what is the first step? If I just feel like my hands are tied, I'm a developer, right? I'm a team member. I work on a marketing team. I work on the facilitation team. I'm part of the group that, writes the greeting cards. I do a lot of work with Hallmark. So what do I do? Where do I start? What is my first step to? So I guess if you had to give a piece of advice to someone who is struggling with managing dependencies, what might be the first 1 or 2 things they could do? Just bullet point 1 or 2 things. What could they do to start taking care of it, to start tackling the problem? I don't want you to give away the whole class, but what might someone expect to learn?
Oh, sure. So no, it's a good point. If you're suffering from dependencies, and if you're in a large organization, chances are you are suffering from dependencies. What I'm hoping you'll learn is the ability to have this lens through which you can view what's happening in your organization. And by looking through that lens, say, okay, this is what we're doing. Because part of these webinars I do is a myth busting on dependencies. Mm-hmm. And then usually by the end of the webinar, people are like, yeah, you just described my organization, and we're like doing all those myths. So yes, that sort of lays the foundation. Okay, you're right. These are the problems. I knew we were having them. Now I understand why. Now, what do I do about it? And so the goal is to give people actionable advice. So if you're on a team, keep in mind, structurally, if you're a team member, you can't make the changes at the organizational level. That's leadership is going to have to do that. But that doesn't mean there's nothing you can do if you're on the team. There's plenty that you can do to help better visualize your dependencies. For example, I'll give you something very concrete. I was doing a class a traditional kind of Scrum class, but dependencies always comes up in those classes. And the person said, well, again, the downstream team, when we told them, we're done and we need you to do your part now, they said, well, it's going to be a while before we get to it. And my first comment was, when did you alert them that there was something to do? They go, when we finished our work. I go, is it clear that was the wrong time to have done that? Well, when should we have alerted them? The moment you started your work. To say, we've begun work on thing A. Remember, you guys need to do thing B, and you need to have it done by this date. We're just letting you know we've already started, or we're about to start. And so heads up. So that would be a technique called downstream alerting. And I don't mean alerting when we're done, when they have no ability to adapt to that. It's like, oh, okay, so you need us to get it done now. Well, I wish I'd known that because you're not prioritizing our backlog. Sorry. So those are things that team members can do today that could substantially start to improve at least what I call instantiated dependencies, the dependencies that are live in their environment that they have to work with, whereas senior management tends to deal with structural dependencies like, maybe we should move a legal person onto that team.
Yes.
The team members probably can't make that happen on their own, but leadership could if they thought it was a good idea.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's the reason why Ken Rubin's one of my favorite trainers and coaches on the planet, and the author of one of the best-selling books, Essential Scrum. That advice was priceless. And that's exactly the benefit of people tuning in and listening to people like you. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you being here. It's been fun, but 15 minutes flies by. So I appreciate your time. You're awesome. And if you don't have a copy of Essential Scrum, go now, Amazon, buy one. It's available in like 100 different languages. I'm exaggerating, but it's available in a lot of different languages. But 10, okay. So, but it's one of those things where it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in. And I want to make sure I point this out. It doesn't matter if you're a product owner, if you're a Scrum Master. It doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what your position is. It doesn't matter what your role is. And it doesn't matter what type of organization you're in. A lot of people think, Scrum or Agile is just for software, and that's not true. We find that it's helpful in marketing and finance and legal and entertainment. I mean, you name the industry, it's there, it's present, right? And I hope that if you don't have a copy of this book that you'll get it, because it really is, and I tell people this, it is the gold standard for what you need to do if you're doing Scrum. So Ken, thanks for your time. I appreciate you. And anybody, if they want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you, Ken? That's the last thing I need from you.
You can always send me email at krubin@involution.com.
There you go. And I'll make sure I drop some of that in details underneath our podcast here, so that way everybody can see it. Ken, it's been nothing less than a pleasure. We'll catch up again. As always, if you have a topic you want us to discuss, or if you want to learn more about dependencies, I'll be happy to put you in touch with Ken and Involution so you can figure those things out. Thanks again. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile. Until next time, do take care.